Take two. Welcome to the Borderlands Trail and Ultra Running Podcast. My name is Josh. I'm the host. I'm the founder of Borderlands, and I'm stoked today to be doing another Bad Runner's Take with my dude, Brian Peterson.
Borderlands, somehow we're still not learning. Borderlands, we still suck at running.
All right, this Borderlands, this Bad Runner's Take was originally my way of just by myself doing some monologues like Wolfie's World is becoming. But then Brian came along and we just started having a lot of fun doing these together. And so the name Bad Runner's Take, it was kind of this joke of like, hey, I'm a bad runner and these are bad takes. So this is in no way a commentary on Brian and his performance as a runner. This was just me having a little fun saying, hey, what if I started to chime in on topics, on current events, on things within trail and ultra and road and track running and just start to infuse my voice into it. And it was new as of July, August of this year. I remember I was at Tivoli Gardens in Copenhagen with my family. I was like, hey, I got to take a call. There's this guy named Brian who wants to talk. And so we start talking and we're like, hey, let's dive in and start to do this. And these episodes, sometimes our rhythm has been once a week, every other week. But in general, these have been just very enjoyable episodes. And today I think we're going to turn up the volume a little bit going into year 2 of the podcast, which starts in January. And just try and do more and do better and bring you more value. And in so doing, we're having a blast doing it. So before we go any further, Brian, welcome.
Yeah.
Glad you're back.
Good morning. Good afternoon.
Yeah.
Right? Thanks for all the listeners tuning in.
So today, good afternoon for me.
Exactly.
Good early morning for you. Okay, so today we are going to do, we're going to look into the future. I think back to, and this is crazy to think about. In the 90s, I loved Conan O'Brien, and he had a skit called In the Year 2000. And it was just this hilarious skit where he was looking into the future of the year 2000. And here we are 25 years later. We're looking into the year 2025, and we are going through a lens that you proposed of buy, sell. So we're going to look at 6 different things and say, hey, in 2025, are we buying this? Are we into it? Is it going to continue? Is it going to get better? Are we selling it because its glory days are over? So we're going to look at 6 different things there. We're going to talk about your Wolfie's World episode. I'm going to give my Bad Runner's Take on episode 3 of Wolfie's World, which was really good. And then we're going to take some calls. So, all right, without any further ado, buy, sell. I talked about wanting to look at 2025, and you're the one who framed it as buy, sell. Can you expand on this buy, sell idea?
Yeah, I think it's, I'm stealing a little bit from ESPN. They kind of had a good buy, sell segment, just where they throw out a topic that's trending in sports or, a future storyline. And then you treat it kind of like a stock, right? Are you buying or selling this idea? You can take it and run with it and have fun with it, but contextualize the topic in a fun way as a buy-sell response.
Yeah, and we've got some good ones here. As I look at this list, I'm like, oh man, I could go into all of these. And here's the deal. My personality, I think one of the things when we have this Venn diagram of you and me, there's a crossover here that is a little bit contrarian or I'll speak for myself. Sometimes I struggle to celebrate the things that are popular, and I just want to tear them down. And maybe that's the old punk rocker in me. Sometimes it's hard for me to celebrate things that are successful. There's all sorts of reasons we can go there. So I'm really going to try and bring an intuition of whether I think these 6 things are going to do well next year, and then also like some sort of analysis based on fact on how both of these things will do in the next year. All right, first one, I'm going to throw it out there, and I'm going to throw it to you. 2025, are you buying or selling Cocodona 250?
Oh, I got to go heavy buy on that one. Heavy buy on the Cocodona 250 for next year. You've got the Courtney effect, so that's an interesting, addition to the 2025 running. Even without her, I would have been still a heavy buy. The market demand's there. I think the race sells out almost immediately after the entries go live. You've got the live stream community, which again, in this sport, building culture and community is critical. We always talk about self-expression. I think that live stream just does wonders for the Cocodona race itself.
It does.
And so then you've also got a major brand like Satisfy, I think, which we'll touch on, playing a role in Cocodona. So yeah, I can't see it not being another major growth year for Cocodona.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I'm a reluctant buyer of this. Like I'm going to dollar cost average into this
Okay.
thing. You know what I mean? I'm not going to push in all my chips today, but the long haul, for all the reasons you said, that's my objective. I'm aligned with you on that. If all they do is exactly what they did last year, its trend is upward. My dollar cost averaging is coming from, at what point does Aravaipa trip and stumble on itself? Like if you're looking at averages, the law of averages, if you're looking at probability, I haven't seen Aravaipa make a single public mistake from a national scale. I think locals, I've heard locals have their problems, and we don't have to talk about that right now. When is it coming? And I don't want it to come. Don't hear that. I don't want it to come. Any entrepreneur going for something, I always want them to succeed, even if I don't see it. I want Jamil to crush it. I want him to succeed. I want Aravaipa to succeed. But wow, they have had an incredible career and existence without a problem. And at what point does it happen? So that's why I'm dollar cost averaging in, because it's bound to happen. And I don't know what that is, what that thing is, what that stumble is. And in some levels, Jamil sets the tone for the ultra running culture nationwide anyway. So could he make a mistake if he's the one establishing the culture? I don't know.
I don't know, man.
But that's that's where
when
I'm
the roulette wheel is hot, you just keep riding the number, man. And the Aravaipa Jamil, they just seem like they're the Patriots of the 2000 dynasty, where Vegas loved the people like you who wanted to bet against them, thinking it can't be this year, and they ran off another one.
Right. No, you're right. And at what point do they sell Brady and become what they became after selling Brady? You know what I mean? Like, it's too good. This is my problem with it. This is my like punk rock side. It's like it's too good. Every cylinder is firing. Anywhere that they lack, and I would say live coverage and ultra is developing. Anything that they lack, they are getting better at year over year,
Right.
in my opinion. To see Leo Yangling in the mix and Courtney, Joe McConaughey, or how do you say that? String game? Yeah. I'm sorry, man. I bet I mispronounced your name. It's just Ryan Sandy.
I think
it's unbelievable.
With Cocadona, it's not about the elites. I think it's actually the mid-packer show. It's the community and the live stream that's really built up the race to a point where somebody like Courtney can come along, and get the sponsors to support her there, because it's going to be great visibility. You get what I'm saying? Is that it ultimately, it doesn't matter what elites show up. You still have thousands of people that are excited about this 250 miler in the desert. So,
yep, great point. Okay, so we're both in the general bucket of buy, but slightly different attitudes within that bucket.
All
right. What about Satisfy? Satisfy running, based in Paris, France. Brice Partouche, 2025. You buying or selling?
Yeah, again, if we're being emotionless, heavy buy. I mean, they're just starting to hit their stride with mainstream growth. This is kind of where my early adopter syndrome kicks in, and I'm a bit more jaded about the heavy buy, because what that means is now that they're moving away from early adopters like myself. The brand's been around since like 2015, 2016. I've been engaged since.
I was surprised to learn that. When you sent me those videos from way back when speaking Jamil Curry was running in Salt Lake, which kind of bugged me for that old Satisfy video. I was surprised. I didn't know that.
That's what I mean. They're not just popping up overnight, right, and becoming a mainstream player. Now what it is basically they're courting the attention of the mainstream players. And so what I loved about it was you had somebody like Michael Versteeg, who was a bit of a mysterious character still, as the focal point. And now I think we're starting to see them pivot, and not that necessarily Debo is going to become anything official with Satisfy, but he's certainly the one. Every time he's talking on, Second Nature or, getting a microphone, he's excited to, name drop Satisfy. And I don't think, there's anybody that represents the counter image of Michael Versteeg than Debo. And so that's where I'm I'm jaded, right? Is like they're courting
Yeah.
the mainstream attention now just for an economic growth. But again, the segment is about buy sell. So if I'm an investor, I'm
Yeah.
buying.
I don't think there's one early adopter in Satisfy that would ever refer to themselves in the third person. Is that
Right.
right? Calling themselves Debo and having the name Debo and saying, "Here's your boy
Right.
Debo." All those sort of things don't feel like Satisfy early
No.
adoption. Okay, yeah. In 2025, as a wise investor, I'm absolutely buying because of what you say. So when you look at like the whole scale of consumers that are within your target demographic, you have the cutting edge 2.5% would never touch any product. They would see the moth tech and they would say, "Ah, I can do that myself at home. I can create this at home. I can build this at home." And it's about the product. But then that next 2.5%, they're early adopters, and that's who they always are. So anytime anything grows beyond early adoption, they generally abandon it's a strong word, but they don't travel with their brands into like the fans of Green Day and the 1039 Smooth Out Slappy Hours and Kerplunk from like 88 to 92 did not go with them to Dookie and beyond.
Right.
They just don't. They found their next one. So I think with Satisfy in the year 2025, their early adopters are going to publicly disown them and separate themselves from them. But that's okay. That's what happens. Apple's early adopters did that. And so they're moving into this next range, which is like 18 to 20% of the market. And they're going there. And the reason I'm buying as a savvy investor ultimately is for the shoe that's going to come out. I believe in that shoe. I think it's going to, from a performance standpoint, combine performance with their brand. And I think that's going to be a good year for them because of the shoe specifically.
So let me ask you this then,
Jean-Marc Dijon.
as a question here. Do you see that shoe being on a podium? I don't know that.
Okay, that's a good question, but I think of that more as a business
Right.
question. Can their athletes podium? Because yes, in like Moab 240, clearly, it has potential to be on the 200 plus podium. They're in that world. If someone were to wear it, if the great runner were to wear it, absolutely. If it's Jean-Marc Dijon, I'm just who built the mountain running, converted it to trail running at Solomon, went on and he's responsible for the current portfolio at North Face and went on to Satisfy. I think that the only barrier to it being on a podium is purely who's wearing it. I think the shoe would hold up. That's my guess. I don't know enough. I'm not the guy to be able to explain the tech behind it. I'm just saying that the person behind it has a pretty good track record.
Yeah, I guess I'll temper my excitement because in the early designs, it looks like some decisions have been made that are with a marketing mind, like Brees basically, tying it into a remote control car. And, so I don't necessarily know that high performance was the absolute number one priority. It does look like there were, maybe some concessions made in some areas or, make sure that it fits within these parameters because I already know how I want to market it and the design has to apply to that. So we'll see.
Yeah. That's totally fair. I think one final note, as I'm never an early adopter in almost anything. I've never been the guy that's early to the game. I wish I could be more often. I will say that some of Satisfy's marketing that I found to be interesting, though I've never been in the demo. I've just really admired what was happening. Some of that is starting to feel a bit like a caricature of itself. Right. And again, I'm an outsider looking in. I'm not the center of that demo. I celebrate Brees's entrepreneurship in this space, but some of it sometimes feels a bit like cosplay.
Yeah.
So there it is. So, but I'm buying and I'm for them. And I think they're going to have a great year. And their athletes seem to be like salt of the earth, good people. So they've done an awesome job building their athlete team.
Totally.
Okay. Let me set this next one up. It's UTMB's growth, not just UTMB, but its growth. And going into 2025, or so let's say going into 2024, some people would have liked for us to believe that there was a question mark on whether or not UTMB could succeed because of the Gary Robbins stuff. So, and that being, super quick summary, UTMB put a race next to Gary Robbins' race and caused a race that Gary Robbins was putting together to be in question. and UTMB was the big bad beast, and people were going to boycott it and separate themselves from it. And then we do the event last year, and the event last year goes really well. At least like the main event in Chamonix, and it seems like globally, and they're hiring aggressively, so. Are you buying or selling going into the next year in the coming years of UTMB continuing to grow to be the company that is what that the world gathers around as the main ultra, 100K and beyond, 100K to 100 miler, that's the pinnacle. Like, are you buying that UTMB will be that, or are you selling that they will be that?
Buying. Heavy buy. I mean,
yeah,
I thought it was interesting. I think we kind of forget when the UTMB Ironman merge took place, but it was in like middle of 2021. And so if you think of something, of that size and scope for a business, we're just getting into the sweet spot where you're getting some of the, dirty work completed. The thing that for me keeps UTMB and Ironman growing is you have unlimited race capacity in these European events and in Canada, like Whistler, right? So the appealing thing to me is that they're not confined by permit restrictions and things like that in the United States, and that Ironman has endless pockets. So if you have endless capacity, endless financial resources, I mean, I just think that we're just starting to get into the sweet years of this relationship and the growth of the events.
Yeah, I'm going to rethink how I word it based off of how you said it, that a lot of the pain from their growth, they're now on the other side of that hatred to some degree. They've endured, they've stayed with it, they've kept on their track. And now a lot of the people who hated him for Gary Robbins or for Ironman's involvement, all that sort of stuff, they're not, those waters have calmed. And so, really, to your point, there's blue ocean on the other side of that. I'm totally buying. Someone has to do it, and I don't see anybody else within 100 miles of that, being able to be that. And in the end, when as I talk to friends who work there, or a buddy who almost got a job there, just going through the process, like behind the scenes, it seems like the people there are good people, and they're fairly happy that when they're working there. And that says something about company culture, that something good's there. But I don't see anyone touching it. And I hear that Gary Robbins is doing great up there with his event. I don't know the details, but it seems like those waters are smooth, and it's blue ocean.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm buying.
So,
okay. You mentioned this one, ketones. Are we buying or selling ketones?
Heavy stuff.
What is a ketone?
I don't know. I think even some of the early adopters and influencers have had to pivot from what the initial hype around the supplement was, and then they actually found the use case for it. So, as I understand it, currently it's good for post-run recovery, good for daily cognition, but in actual race events, I think it's actually maybe tapered off as a noticeable supplement to be gained. Cost-wise, again, it's still a very expensive supplement for people to implement and use. And so, I think you started to see the market maybe cool a little bit on ketones. If you can afford it, great. Give yourself every advantage, just like Normatec boots and anything else that kind of comes with a premium price tag, but maybe a small diminishing returns after you continue to use it.
Yeah, I'm 100% sell on it. Anybody who's like pushed it or whatever, I mean, it's just they've never. I guess I just even fall asleep when they start to explain it. Like, it just seems like there was never this intuitive. Here's exactly what it does, and I'm also short attention span. I mean, so I'm not saying it's their fault, but it never attracted me. And in general, like race nutrition in general has racket-like qualities to me. Not even just the spring energy thing, but how much stuff do we is being produced that we could produce at home, and there's like this special. I mean, and the price like $350 to $455, $6-7 per hour of running if you're running a 100-miler and you're training for it. It's just an impossible category. So, in my opinion, it's a necessary evil, But ketones, I'm selling them. I don't even know what they are. So happy
Yeah,
to
quick
not
hit.
give
We
up.
can move on, but I just wanted to make sure that we did archive the death of the ketone here as we move into 20.
Yeah. Okay, here's an interesting one. Nike. I feel like they should just be. I want to talk about them simply because, in a buy sell sort of fashion, because where are they? And it would seem like Nike, money doesn't buy you everything, but they've got the money. Why aren't they hitting harder in the sport? They are going, I mean, from everything I hear, they're going to be investing heavily into it. I mean, from a stand like paying athletes, better athlete contracts, all this sort of stuff. So they're going to be trying to buy their way in, but money doesn't solve everything. So they've got people who are smart, know how to get into sports and all that sort of stuff. But in 2025, asterisk, I really like Tyler Green and Rachel Drake and Anthony Casales, all living in Salt Lake, all on the Nike Trail team. I like them a lot. But going into 2025, do you think Nike is going to at any point just really show up? Are you buying them in 2025? Are you selling? Are you holding the stock that you have?
Yeah, I don't know what the opposite of buy and sell is because I'm not even a holder of anything. So yeah, it's
Yeah,
no. Um, yeah, I've been dead against Nike for a long time, road and trail.
yeah.
Active boycotter of the brand, just for a lot of other things that they've got going on, and baggage that they have.
What? Yeah, can you hit me with like high level as someone
Yeah,
who
just
I'm not a
first I didn't
total deep
like
diver?
their they had all the controversy, with the Bowerman Track Club, with their coaches, with their
Yeah,
athletes, right, with doping allegations, toxic
yeah.
environments. You had some scandals around sexual abuse, so just really a lot of heavy things, right? They
Oh,
also
okay. I
yeah
didn't
they
know.
also were treating their women athletes terrible, not paying them when they
Hmm.
got pregnant, and so they had to
Oh,
then rewrite that narrative and change course. I don't
okay.
like how they have a stranglehold on the Olympics. So if you're a non-Nike athlete, you still have to wear the Nike kit. You can't really, you have to go media dark for your brand that
Dang.
supported you the whole time. Didn't like that. Don't like how
Yeah.
basically, again,
Hmm.
Prefontaine, my hero, has been bastardized by the brand. They couldn't further represent, the ethos of Prefontaine. And then, yeah, I mean, as it's specific to trail running, um, yeah, if you don't want to participate in the sport, then I don't need Nike here. And we've been saying that they were going
Yeah.
to invest largely since the Nike Trail team that Billy Yang highlighted in the first UTMB video. So how many chances are we going to give a brand that's got all the money and cachet to come into the sport? We don't need them now. The
Yeah.
sport's built. I don't want them to come in. I don't want them to wait until this sport has validity and then just throw their massive, empire behind it and kind of overtake the narrative. So no culture, no
Yeah.
self-expression. It's a lame brand. You know, People are going to like the shoes because they still probably put out a quality product, but as a
Yeah.
brand and as them wanting to be a part of trail, if they don't want to be a part of us, then I certainly don't think we should want to be a part of them.
Yeah, that's good. No, I guess is that the Alberto
Yeah,
Salazar's controversy?
yeah,
Okay. Okay, I'm aware of some of that. Not all of it for sure. To me, like intuition wise, like I just know they're gonna figure something out at some point where they at least increase their shoe count at major races for a season. I don't think it's in 2025, so I'm selling in 2025. But if this were a 5 year buy sell, I would be buying on their 5 year, thinking there's got to. I mean, how do they not figure a way in, especially if that compounding annual growth rate keeps being on that that hockey stick trajectory as we hear it is? Uh, they're bound to find their way in and find their voice. But right now they don't have their voice, though. As mentioned, I like their athletes, so I'm selling in 2025, buying for 2030.
yeah. I don't know. I just think Nike kind of shrunk. Like when you think about golf, they had the number one golfer, Tiger Woods. They had
Yeah,
produced a golf club. They were producing golf balls, and then they've completely turned face and they've exited that sport. Essentially, all they are now is a golf apparel company. They have no gear, and I see them maybe looking
yeah,
at trail running as the same thing, where maybe we don't put in tons of product to the market. We just do what we do best, which
mm,
is apparel. So I don't know. We'll see.
yeah. I was in Detroit. I can't remember the year, 2018. Standing outside, there was like a little league like championship game happening in the Tigers Stadium, and I was standing on a rail, like next to a rail, just looking in. It's a really cool stadium in the city, so you don't even necessarily have to be in there, and you can kind of see in a little and work your way in a little bit. Started chatting with this guy next to me, and it turned out he was the original president of Nike Golf, and he went on to start Reef Sandals, and then he started Merrill shoes, and he has a list of like 9 things. This guy, Bob Reef. Anyway, that's my only connection to Nike.
Right on.
That guy from that day. All right, final buy sell. In the year 2024, we at least saw the popularization of Here for the Women's Race in the way of the shirts. I don't know when like that started to stir behind the scenes, but very popular going into 2025. And I think on some levels, maybe the initial question before we talk buy sell is what does it mean? I don't feel like I got a really great definition of what it means. Was Here for the Women's Race about saying we want to increase the number of women running, or do we want to increase the amount of time? We want 50-50 coverage, men for women. So I think maybe the first thing, it was a little bit confusing. This isn't a commentary on whether I'm going to buy or sell or believe in it or don't believe in it. Maybe you just want to try and define it. I mean, how did you read it? How did you understand it?
Yeah, I mean, it certainly felt like it was... certainly felt like the catalyst to do that was kind of the Corinne controversy, right? Corinne was on the UTMB live stream, heavily advocating, borderline or definitively criticizing UTMB, for their lack of fair coverage. And then we roll out the Here for the Women's Race. So I certainly think it was kind of, born out of, that UTMB controversy, or to try and highlight, to make sure that there was more awareness on equal coverage for the women's race, which is just the top 10 women. It's not the women's race. Let's be honest. It's the women's professional top 10 race. I think that's what it was born out of. As they structured something more definitive, they realized probably it's a better look, and better for the community, right, if we involve all women. And so then it, took a formal shape of a nonprofit agency that was there to support women and give back in entry fees, or supporting FKTs, I think is when I read on this earlier. So that's kind of my thoughts on how it was conceptualized and rolled out.
Yeah. Well, going in, I mean, all right, in as much as what it means is that the women's race is exciting and really worth paying attention to. I'm pushing a bunch of chips in there. I'm buying a lot of that, because when I think about storylines going into next year, at Western States, if Killian run, I mean, I can't tell you how actually I'm indifferent I am to Killian running Western States. But when I think about, Jim going back for a 4th, that's actually more exciting to me. Roach going there, and even though I'm not we've talked about in the past, I'm maybe not a huge fan of his podcast, but because he has people who love him, and if people are going to love you, that means people also hate you. And I love the idea of someone like that winning. That there's fun storylines happening there. But by and large, I do feel like, and maybe this is a success of Here for the Women's Race, is that those storylines have been really good. And I've said it 100 times. I love watching Katie Scheid go out and dominate and, climb her way up the overall, finish time or finish place. Courtney going into next year sounds like fun. So I'm buying, in as much as what it means is the women's race is exciting and worth paying attention to. As an activist thing, I'm going to put a question mark over that because I don't fully get it.
Yeah. So I never needed this T-shirt to be excited for the women's race. So that's kind of where I'm starting with this, is like, I feel like if anything, it's kind of maybe put again an asterisk on something that didn't even need this, because the women's race has always been exciting. It's always been, thrilling to watch, the women come in and compete against the men on the same, start line, see their performance gains year over year, which is interesting because as a women's sport, I think ultra trail running is the best example of how women can be marketable in a professional sport environment. You take something like the WNBA or women's soccer, those are largely subsidized. They wouldn't be successful on their own as a professional league without the men's leagues propping them up, right? So the women's race really didn't need this shirt. So again, I'm selling the shirt as something effectively doing something. And I think the way I started this highlights again, it was not intended necessarily for the 95% of women. It was intended as a response to UTMB not providing coverage of the women's podium at UTMB. And then from there, they put on these attachments to it, I think, to make it a more well-celebrated effort, which is, that's great, right? Yeah. But with great responsibility, right? Or with great powers come, greater responsibility. And I think, you've got to do a better job of kind of telling the stories, that this thing's doing for women not on the top 10.
Yeah. And to be honest, on that coverage, I don't care who I'm looking at in the coverage. Show me something worth looking at. And if that's a man doing something incredibly interesting, or if that's a woman doing something incredibly interesting, to take the time and worry about the percentage of time on which a camera is pointed to one or the other, I don't care. Don't show me something stupid and boring. And that could be a man, that could be a woman. Like if this is about leveraging the eyes and ears that you have into entertaining, and within that entertainment, we're going to grow the consumer, the retail version of the sport that people are going to sit at home and watch it. It's got to be the most exciting stuff. Now, and then what I'll say is that right now, I think some of the women's stuff is the more exciting stuff. Some of those storylines are the more exciting storylines and the things that I'm interested to see. I want to see Katie get top 5 at UTMB or top 3. Like, wouldn't that be an interesting story? But if all of a sudden in the race, she's 9th, 10th, or 100th, don't put the camera on. 9th or 10th, put the camera. But if 100th place because she's out, maybe put the camera to show the suffering and the agony of defeat. But I want to see the most interesting thing. Put the camera on the most interesting thing in 2025.
Yeah, and I want to see, the best of the best women line up at the best races. And unfortunately, right now, the women are kind of going through this period where, they're just not doing that simply, right? So, we aren't getting to see the best of the best on the women's side, line up at the races like Western States and UTMB. We want to see more consistently the Courtneys and the Katies and the Leahs and everyone else that you can rattle off on a first name basis on the women's field competing against each other. Like we do with the men. So I know it's a loaded topic, right? Like, who wants to hear two dudes talking about the women's race? But we're the majority of the fanfare of the sport. So I think our opinion is still extremely valid because we are the ones that have the loudest voice, I think, in the sport just by sheer numbers. And so what we're saying isn't from a place of, being adversarial to it, but just kind of, helpful criticism to better lift up the sport as a whole.
Yeah. And I'm actually quite often opposed to the idea that the only people that can talk about a topic are those who are directly involved within the topic. So to say, here for the women's race, that only a woman could offer commentary, I don't think is useful or helpful. And to your point, if 80%, 75%, 70% of the sport is men, and they're pushing for, if we're going to talk about representation, which is a very loaded topic, to say, okay, if 70% of the sport is men, but we're advocating for 50% of the coverage to be women, I'm totally fine with that. But we got to be able to have the conversation and got to have a place to offer our bad takes. Yeah. And maybe that's what we just did. Maybe our takes were absolute garbage, but we got to throw them out there somehow. Someone's got to tell us we're wrong or right, or just turn us off.
Right. Maybe the other thing I thought about too with it was that maybe it was messaging not for the fan of the sport, because they already understood that they had the fan on board with it. If anything, I think it's good messaging to brands for sponsorship deals. It's a good way to kind of, virtue signal to brands that women, are going to stand up for themselves and maybe, getting more comparable contracts, because I'm sure there's a disparity there that we don't even have visibility to. So that would be the only aspect that I would be a bit naive to or ignorant is, the efforts that this has had with them economically. And, if that's helped them, let's hear those stories and celebrate them, because, again, in this
Yeah.
sport, the women are just as talented or very close to the men, and certainly
Yeah.
deserve every dollar that men are getting.
Yeah, you're right. In this sport, I 100%
Right.
agree with you. Okay, there it is. 6 things that we're buying and selling, and why. Let us know. Hit us up. Let us know what you think. We're not afraid to be wrong or challenged or whatever. It'd be fun to engage with any one of you who want to talk with us about it. All right, here we go. Now we're going to talk about Wolfie's World, episode 3. Wolfie's World is Brian's new weekly monologue that we release here on the Borderlands channel, about 15 to 25 minutes in that range. And the whole idea is I don't want any editorial control over it. I don't want to say, hey, this is what's in bounds, this is what's out of bounds. Like, what's unique and special about Wolf Runner is his take and his insight. And so right now it's just my job. I'm just providing the platform and doing some editing on the back end and releasing and doing some marketing for it. Can you give us the high level on episode 3, already released by the time someone's listening to this, and I'll give you my take on it.
Yeah, so I think episode 3 is going to be talking about speed and fast, kind of decoupling the two words, deconstructing how we define them and how we relate to them as ultra runners, and then kind of acknowledging that ultra running is a unique sport where I think people gravitate to it because time and pace aren't necessarily the end goal or any type of pursuit of the runners. And I think it comes at a disservice then if you entirely throw out speed as part of your training plan. So that's kind of the high level overview of it. How did it land with you? I know you got to listen to it, so.
Yeah, I listened to it a couple times. I mean, I love it. I mean, here's the thing: the high level of what I think the value of Wolfie's World is, and hopefully, like our buy sell stuff, is not that people will just inherently and blindly agree with us. Is that maybe there'll be some challenge for you to think as well. If someone doesn't like our Here for the Women's Race take, that's totally fine. But think and let's think together. We're not positioning ourselves. You're not positioning yourself as the end all be all, but you are putting forward a thesis that you have conviction around and that you've thought through. So that's one of the things I love. I listen to it and I have to think. For me, though, speed, and another asterisk is I am actually optimizing for speed right now for the first time in like 15 years, 12 years. And I'm loving it. I really am loving getting out there and seeing that as a 42-year-old man that I can increase my speed right now. It's really rewarding. But there was so much of my life that speed, in my running life, where if I went out and approached my running like a sport or an athlete, that would have not given me the thing that I really needed out of running in that decade of my life. Because, as an entrepreneur, I'm very ambitious. I'm extremely competitive. I really, no matter how great things are going today, I can never celebrate today because I'm always thinking about tomorrow. And if that was also my running is how I actually escape from that. My mind is just a relentless, and often, annoying because I can't get it to stop except when I run. And so a lot of times my running was about distancing myself from having to measure something like that. And even my towing the line of 100 milers, until my 10th one, my first 9, finishing wasn't critical to accomplish what I wanted to accomplish while I was out there. But 10, this one's about finishing, and slow though it may have been, I finished. So for me, like as I was processing, to me, running's about personal restoration, self-reflection, shredding anxiety. It's how I distribute stress more evenly across my body and get rid of the stuff. It wasn't about speed. So I wasn't afraid of the speed workouts. It was just like, gosh, today, I wasn't calculating my training at all because I was going out there for all of these other reasons. Now, as I'm aging, because I'm afraid I'm going to lose my ability to do that sort of stuff, I am finding myself care more about performance than I ever have. And I didn't see this coming. So my take on this is that not everybody cares about running faster in this space. And for those who don't, I understand why. if they align with what I'm saying, that we're out there for other reasons. Now, for those who are genuinely like, for as you outline in the podcast, and I highly recommend people listen to it, of being afraid of it, for all the reasons, and I think you addressed them. But yeah, that's my high level. That's my take on it. Is that I wasn't in it for speed. Speed didn't matter. Finishing wasn't actually why I was in it. I was trying to get away from all of those types of like measuring myself against myself. All of that. I needed to be away from that, and now I want to be.
Right. Yeah, that's fascinating. I mean, again, that just highlights kind of the differences of our sport. You know, ultra running obviously brings in a bunch of different individuals with different experience levels. That's different, I think, than road running. Like, you know, nobody toes the line at a marathon without the explicit goal of finishing, right? Like everybody's goal in that marathon is to finish. So it's absolutely fascinating and eye-opening to me to hear, you know, that there are potentially individuals in ultra running who sign up for a 100-mile race with no actual a goal as a finish. And again, the whole purpose of my speed and fast conversation was on the premise of not to become faster, but to become more efficient so that the finish for you is more obtainable. And I think that speed, even if you're a sole runner, as a workout mechanic, again, as a way to sharpen yourself against, allows you to get more out of what your why is. So again, we could debate this.
Yeah, that was really well worded. I love that. This allows you to accomplish your why better. And to that, I agree. Because as I'm out, one of the fun things I'm enjoying right now about tending to speed right now is that, okay, on my slow days are getting faster. I mean, everyone experiences that. And it's just really cool. So now I know if I'm at a lower heart rate, I'm actually running faster at a lower heart rate than I ever have, or I have in a long time. And even if my goal is to get out and run for all the things I just mentioned, well, like you just said, I'm more likely to accomplish a lot of those things with having some speed behind it. And so to your point, I think everyone benefits from speed. And then kind of the last point though, to just drive it home, what's the difference between speed and fast? Why do you talk about decoupling speed from fast?
Right. Yeah. And so this is where kind of the concept really hatched a life of its own, where I thought it could carry the weight of the conversation for Wolfie's World episode, was that to me, speed is objective. It's based on objective truths, right? Like it is factual. We all have a pace at which it is considered speed for us. So whether you're a 15-minute mile person at aerobic, doing something at a 10-minute mile pace for a period of time is speed, right? You don't have to be doing something sub 6 minutes for it to be speed. Fast is purely subjective. Fast is something that requires your opinion, your feeling. It requires comparison. And so if you decouple the two, right, like it allows you to embrace and own speed in your own authentic way without feeling like you're an imposter of being a fast runner. So again, that's kind of where we go into the episode.
Yeah, that's really insightful. So again, for everybody, every Tuesday we're releasing Wolfie's World as a 15 to 25 minute monologue where Wolfie goes through whatever he wants to go through, talk about that day. So yeah, stay tuned and we'll hear more. Hey, you all are starting to call a lot, and I am a very disorganized human, and I am doing my best. Thank you all for calling. As we stick with this, someday maybe we can do some live shows where you can call in and we can actually talk to each other. That's on we first got to get good at this before we go to that next level and go for live. And so thank you all for calling. This is just a treat. It's cool to get to hear your voices, to know that you're listening, to know that you have questions. As usual, I'm only doing just enough on these to get them loaded in here. I want to be with Brian in that we're hearing it for the first time and giving you our instinctual response. So here we go. Here's Alex from Boise.
Hey guys, first time caller, long time listener, Alex from Boise. I just want to say thank you for being a podcast that kind of represents all people. I think one thought I've had recently just from hearing you guys riff on a lot of different things is just the appreciation for not idolizing elite runners. I think appreciating elite runners is awesome, and
kind of
their
shit on
peaks
them
is
sometimes.
amazing. But it's one of the most, I think, unrelatable topics to have an elite runner on a podcast over and over again, and for us kind of normal middle of the back of the packers, it just doesn't hit home. But I think that's what's fun about you guys, is you kind of talk about all things that you and, it'd be like any conversation having with buddies. So I'd just be curious, why a lot of the media is fantasized about just the elite scene more than the rest of us. It's like, it almost is like the 1% and the 99%. So I hope that makes sense. But yeah, appreciate you guys, and curious to hear your take. And yeah, have a good one. Happy trails.
All right, thanks, Alex. Wolfie, you want to try for that
Yeah,
one?
no, that's a great one. Yeah, man, appreciate it, Alex. I mean, my take on it, and this is kind of why I wanted to do Wolfie's World and kind of, volunteer myself into the Bad Runners Take to engage more, is because I'm not elite, right? And I think most of the voices or the platforms with the biggest light right now, they're by elites for elites. And so they're talking about things that are authentic and interesting to them. And then the secondary platform is, by people who want to be liked by elites. And so I think they're going out of their way to cater, to highlight voices in the elite field, because I think it's their idea of how they validate themselves. And, Alex, that's worth all the, voice memos from elite runners telling me how great we're doing. We just want to be here to have the conversations that we know everybody else is in their DMs. So appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. I think what it just, and that our sport is mostly comprised of people who participate in it. I know other soul sports are that way, but even if I'm inspired by an elite runner, which I absolutely am, and I've often said that, hey, I would trade what I've got going here in my body for an elite. I would love to be an elite runner. I'm not. It's not happening anytime soon or ever. And so when I see an inspiring performance, I go out and I participate. And that's how we all are. And most of us would rather run than watch that inspiring performance any day of the week, or at least we're going to go run right after it or during it, or we're going to miss it entirely. And so I think that is the bulk of us. Even if we're here for the race, the men or the women's race, if we're here for it, we're still going to get out and go run. And so that's who because that's me. That's who I feel like there's a lot of us out there, and there's not a lot of voices that are talking to that person. And so it's thanks for noticing. I appreciate that. All right, Strauss in Texas.
Hey, this is Strauss from Texas. I enjoyed the podcast. So planning a mini vacation with my wife, middle of January, and looking somewhere, maybe where we could run. So if you don't mind, kind of giving 5 to 10 places in the U.S. Where we could fly to and run. Thanks. Bye.
All right. Maybe it's not flying for you. Maybe all of yours are Arizona. But if you had $1,500 and a free 3 or 4 days, just to run, where are you going?
Yeah, I mean, well, so what I know in my own backyard, starting with, I mean, certainly the Prescott, Flagstaff, Sedona. You could set up base anywhere. They're all accessible within, an hour or so of each other. So that's definitely a hotbed for trail running. That's where I would send anybody into my home state. Southern California, certainly has big mountains. You've got Baldy, Gregorio, so Cactus to Cloud would be a pretty cool thing to do. It's the largest continual vertical gain, I believe, in the continental United States. You start at like sea level and get over 10,000 feet in one ascent. So those are some of the things that, I'm personally familiar with. But yeah, I mean, if I had $1,500, where would I want to go? Maybe I'd probably want to go up the Pacific Northwest. That looks like probably an area that's radically different from mine. It's, it's moist, ground's a little bit softer. It's got foliage, right? So yeah, that's where I'm heading.
Yeah. To anyone who knows me, this will be no shock, but I'm exclusively going to desert locations. I'd go to Moab simply because if you're new to the desert, it's there's just a lot of ways to get into it, and they're simple. It's a fantastic entry point into desert running because it's a city that's got a lot of adventure in it, and people are there ready to tell you where to go. The signage is great, the loops are reasonable, but it's real nice desert running. And if you love hot desert running, it's a wonderful July run, like just sweating. I love that. Next is I would go to Gooseberry Mesa or to Virgin, which is like near Zion. And then third is I want to go see one of these big Seguro cactuses in person. So I would just have Brian point me to a trailhead that would make me see as many as possible.
Right on my backyard, buddy.
Arizona desert.
Yeah.
Really? You see them often? Like you just walk out there and
No,
you
I
see
mean,
them?
not literally, but yeah, I mean, it's like
Not
my home
there.
trails are less than, 10-minute drive. So we're right there on the,
Yeah.
the county limits, basically.
Yeah, Strauss. So go to the desert. If you take my advice, go to the desert. But you can't lose if you do a boulder. Don't go to Denver. Don't go to Denver. There's no mountains in Denver. Denver is more like Omaha than it is like Denver. But boulders in the mountains, you can get some trail running there. But we got a Western bias here. Of course, anywhere along the Appalachian Trail, North Carolina, Western North Carolina, and I hope they're doing well post hurricane. I don't know what the situation is there for a lot of the races that are there, but man, so many good options. Thanks for calling and asking. All right. We got an international call here coming from Canada.
Hey, Josh. Name's Andrew from Calgary, Canada. I think one of the reasons people don't want to phone in is we don't get to listen to ourselves afterwards, so it's a little nerve-wracking that we might blow it. Listening to your podcast right now, and you're talking about skateboarding and kind of the relation of how the greatest parts of it were when you were riding to the skate park in the van, hanging out with your friends. I can second that. I was terrible at skateboarding. All of my best memories are the antics we got up to while we were looking for awesome skate spots. So I'm seeing that now with my own friends in trail running. So I think it's a spot-on analogy. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, Andrew in Calgary. I've got to give credit to Floris Gearman. That came from a conversation I was having with him. But even the more I think about it, the skateboard culture, the stuff that made it most interesting when I think back to Jason Lee of Mallrats fame, like when he was that era of the 90s in skateboard culture, a lot of what was funny and fun and like pulling you in was it was the hanging out. It was the being together. And I don't know that a trail running company can capture that. It's not what it is, even though we all out there running and having fun together. Some of it is just unique and special to skateboarding or rollerblading, BMX bikes, anywhere where you'd hop in a van and go and just have a session, an all day session,
No, I mean,
an
I
8-hour
agree.
session on a ledge.
It's just like any sport, whether you're taking
that's cool. You have
a
any
bus
thoughts on
ride in
that?
high school to go play your rival. The game's cool, but nothing better than hopping in the bus with your buddies after taking a W, and that's where all the memories are at. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. We've got one more here that I'm going to take today. Preston in Arkansas.
Hey, Josh. This is Preston in Arkansas again. I did finish that my first ultra a couple weeks ago. It was a 50K, a little over a 50K, 35 miles here in the Ozarks, and had a blast, and I can say I'm definitely hooked. But the reason I'm calling, though, today is I just wanted to get you guys' take on watches. So I've been thinking really hard about getting a watch. I've got my wife's Fitbit that I use sometimes, but most of the time I just track my runs with Strava on my phone, and that's super inconvenient. That really kind of reared its head during that race. So started delving into the market for GPS watches, and there are so many. It's overwhelming. I don't really know what to do. So I was just going to see if maybe you could kind of dive into that a little bit on an episode, maybe.
Yeah, right on. Thanks, Preston. Yeah, that's. I love that you went into your first effort without a watch. Like I'm so in the bubble of ultra where. I often joke, they used to say running is just about grabbing some shoes and going for a run. And those days are long gone. You got to buy the shoes and you got to buy the everything. And then you got to buy the expensive watch and all that. So first off, I love that. And if you want to get a watch, I celebrate it. But man, anyone out there who's going for it without a watch, I'm very romantic, toward that that idea of just going for it. Your phone battery is going to die. It's not going to last very long if you're going to track on your phone. I was a Garmin guy for a number of years, but because I was a slower runner in the 100 milers, I was often having to charge while running, and that was really inconvenient to charge my watch. So I'd have to have a battery pack going into my, onto the side of the Garmin, and then I'm running with this weird thing. So I switched to Coros because their battery life was just absurdly long. I don't know how they went from 11 hours on my equivalent Garmin to 35, 36 hours on here, but I'm not a gear geek. I can't go in too far deep, but I really love my Apex.
I've been all over the place. I like refreshing my watch. Every 2 to 3 years, something that keeps me, excited about running. I love the watch. But yeah, my first response was like, "Oh, that's awesome, man! No watch, right?" But then I heard he records on his phone, and it's like, "Oh man, that's more effort to me than having a watch, right?" So like. That's it. Maybe, do yourself a service and, pick yourself up a watch. Any of the platforms now, Garmin, Coros, Sunto, they're all going to offer something that's got insane battery life. So I don't know if you noticed, Josh, but the Garmin Phoenix lineup, the Apex, there's a ton of other ones now that match or surpass the Verdict's or Apex battery life now. So everything, you can even get a model that's, 2 years old for deep discounts, pick one up used. It's going to get a little bit of scratches on it. So
that's what I was
don't go crazy or get sticker shock when you see they're like $900 to $1,000 for the premium watches. Go pick yourself up something, that's a year or two old and still going to be a huge upgrade from the Fitbit.
Yeah. And if your goal is just to sync it with Strava so you can capture that event that you can always look back on and all that, and if you're, in the 50K range, 50K distance, not budget, if you're in the 50K distance range, eBay is an awesome, because like you're saying, I think a lot of people are like Brian, I am. Every 2 to 3 years you get the new watch, which means on eBay, you're going to buy a 2 to 3 year old model. And that's perfectly good. There's also, the third largest sporting good brand in the world is Decathlon. America doesn't have a single one of them, but they have some stuff that's like wildly cheap. They have a GPS watch, I think, that syncs with Strava. That's like sub $50. And if you're just dipping your toes in and you want to try out, they do ship to America. They have a shoe brand that I just came across called Kip Run. That's really high quality shoe for sub $100. It's crazy. I was going to say,
it's also, you made a great plug for the Wolfie's World episode that's going to drop tomorrow. Go ahead. Concerned about battery life, more reason to insert a little bit of speed into your workouts, so you can make sure you finish before the watch dies. Everybody wants that nice, clean one Strava upload activity. So, and then I lost my train of thought, but go ahead. That's all I was going to say there.
Yeah. No, you're exactly right. I think that's perfect. That's a perfect segue to also then tie everything up. So we've got buy, sell, Cocodona, Satisfy, UTMB's growth, the women's race, Ketones, Nike, and my take on the most recent Wolfie's World, and then some calls. Please keep calling. We really love those phone calls. Keep them coming. The number's in the show notes. Also, if the song doesn't stick with you, that's fine. But we just jam-packed a lot of stuff into a short amount of time. So thank you guys for engaging. Maybe listen twice and then join us again for next time. Thanks for joining me, Brian. See you.